Greetings. Here I read out excerpts from books, movie scenes, poems, etc. that are living in my mind rent-free, hence the name of this channel. Afterward, I will add some brief comments regarding the excerpt and why I chose it. Today's excerpts, plural, are from The Lord of the Rings Part 2 and Part 3. A crouching shape, scarcely more than the shadow of a living thing. A creature now wholly ruined and defeated, yet filled with a hideous lust and rage. And before it stood stone, untouchable now by pity, a figure robed in white. Second excerpt. A strange expression passed over his lean, hungry face. The gleam faded from his eyes, and they went dim and grey, old and tired. A spasm of pain seemed to twist him, and he turned away, peering back up towards the pass, shaking his head as if engaged in some interior debate. Then he came back. For a fleeting moment, could one of them have seen him, they would have thought that they beheld an old weary hobbit, shrunken by the years that had carried him far beyond his time, beyond friends and kin, and the fields and streams of youth, an old, starved, pitiable thing. Third excerpt. But I am not such a man, or I am wise enough to know that there are some perils from which a man must flee. Sit at peace, and be comforted. Fourth excerpt. I did not mean the danger that we all share. I mean a danger to yourself alone. You swore a promise by what you call the precious. Remember that. It will hold you to it, but it will seek a way to twist it to your own undoing. Already you are being twisted. You revealed yourself to me just now, foolishly. Give it back to Smeagol, you said. Do not say that again. Do not let that thought grow in you. You will never get it back, but the desire of it may betray you to a bitter end. You will never get it back. In the last need, Smeagol, I should put on the precious, and the precious mastered you long ago. If I, wearing it, were to command you, you would obey, even if it were to leap from a precipice or to cast yourself into the fire. And such would be my command. Fifth excerpt. He rose and gazed out eastward, shading his eyes, as if he saw things far away that none of them could see. Then he shook his head. No, he said in a soft voice. It has gone beyond our reach. Of that at least let us be glad. We can no longer be tempted to use the ring. We must go down to face a peril near despair, yet that deadly peril is removed. End of excerpts. Now, somewhat self-evidently, pretty much all of that could apply to any pathological temptation or desire. However, with that being said, I think the more singular, specific, and, for lack of a better word, dangerous the desire, the more applicable that is. I don't think these lines are as strongly connected to, for example, let me rephrase. These lines don't work as well in the context of the desire to break one's diet, for example. They don't work as well with regards to matters of discipline, so to speak. And when I say they don't work as well, I mean they don't seem to fit as acutely. Now there is a reasonable degree of correspondence because ultimately breaking one's diet once is irrelevant, but breaking it 40 times will lead one to hell, so to speak, as is the case with all other forms of discipline. However, by their nature, these lines are better suited to, for example, in Crime and Punishment, Raskolnikov is wrestling with himself over whether or not to kill the old woman, if I'm remembering correctly, the pawnbroker Lizaveta, I believe is her name. That is one singular deed which instantly, if executed, would send one to the land of no return. And the lines in the excerpts thus far read, match with that. Now, as for why these excerpts are living rent free in my head, well, I'm not going to go into specific details of the temptation, but well, I don't know if I'd say this is applicable to everyone, but I suspect that a fair few people have. There's a reason that I just quoted Crime and Punishment. There is a reason that I just spoke of a deed or a desire to do a deed or a desire to do a very specific set of deeds. That last one is the most accurate, which would lead one to the land of no return, which in the context of what I'm thinking of, the deeds, they're pathetic first and reprehensible second. That's a decent way to think of them. Or they are equal parts pathetic and reprehensible, which the cynical part of me is like, bloody hell. If you were gonna do something reprehensible, may as well have gone in for a penny and for a pound. But the part of me that's sane knows, or hopes, or suspects, or believes that the apparent, alleged, and ultimately, I think this is a false use of the word, but I'm gonna use it anyway, patheticness of the deeds, desires, and thoughts, actions, and words of which I am thinking is all that, well, saved me from being cast into the fire like a certain golem was at the end of The Lord of the Rings. Anyways. Yeah, I think that's the end of this extract. I can't think of anything more to add. Oh, one thing. So the last two quotations were quotes of confidence, so to speak. They were quotes of someone who has faced peril or come near to peril and is now assured in either their ability or the machinations of circumstance to keep themselves safe from peril. Let's just say those lines were more applicable to me a few months ago and for most of the past period of a year and a half than they are now. As of this moment, I am afraid. Though then I can't help but wonder if the only reason to be afraid, can't state this more clearly right now, but the only reason to be afraid or to not be afraid is in myself, so to speak. I've never liked that as a generic concept. I've never liked the frame of thought which is in Stoicism and it's in Marcus Aurelius's Meditations and so on and so forth, that the idea that what emotion we feel and our emotional subsystems are completely removed from the outside world. But in this case, because obviously they aren't, we are evolved to operate within the outside world and our emotional systems are tuned to that. Now, that doesn't mean that the emotional systems do not often react in ways that are completely at cross purposes with what the circumstance of reality requires. But to say that our emotional systems are or can ever be completely removed from the outside world and its circumstances is, I think, completely stupid. And it has such a claim completely lays waste to all understanding of human nature and human evolution. But with that being said, just because it is stupid at a generic level, at an absolute, does not mean it cannot occasionally be true, and I think in this occasion it is true. Anyways, this has devolved less into me talking about the excerpts and more into me generically rambling about topics which are related to the excerpts, but I guess that's fine. In some sense, even that explains why the excerpts are living in my head. Anyways, with that, I think we may conclude. The excerpts will be either in the description or in a pinned comment, depending on if the excerpts exceed the word limit. As will the book, links to the book, whatever I can find. As will timestamps for each excerpt and my annotations. Thank you for listening. Fairly well.